Hi, everybody. Pastor Stephen here with Cameron.
Hello.
Uh, we're doing another lectionary psalm reflection today. Pastor Sam's unable to make it, so we're just going to have to do our best without him. You think we can handle it, Cameron?
Yeah, we were just talking earlier about how it's the attack of the introverts this morning.
Arr, look out, here we come. Okay, very good. Today we're looking at Psalm 16. You want to give that a read for us, sir?
Keep me safe, O God, for in you I take refuge. I said to the Lord, you are my God. Apart from you I have no good thing. As for the saints who are in the land, they are the glorious ones in whom is all my delight. The sorrows of those will increase who run after other gods. I will not pour out their libations of blood, or take up their names on my lips. Lord, you have assigned me my portion and my cup. You have made my lot secure. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. I will praise the Lord, who counsels me. Even at night my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me. Because he is at my right hand, I will not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad, and my tongue rejoices. My body also will rest secure, because you will not abandon me to the grave, nor will you let your Holy One see decay. You have made known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand.
So Psalm 16 is a miktam, is the way it's classified, which I think is a directly translated means golden. Um, and there's other ways to translate the word miktam, which also mean to be covered up, or to feel like a need to cover up, like there's a time of peril, like there's disaster imminent. So there's a number of miktam psalms. Psalm 16 is one of them, and then there's a bunch of psalms in the 50s that are also miktams. And the idea is that there's a sense of secrecy or a sense of crisis going on, which maybe has some good connections to our situation today. But the idea is that David wrote this, and we don't know exactly what was happening in his life, but he has this reflection, which is happening in a time of peril, but at the same time, it's a really a pretty positive psalm. I mean, he says some really lovely, some really wonderful and hope-filled things about God and about what God is doing for him.
Yeah, I love the thing that you cued into earlier too when we were just chatting before this, and it says, "Apart from you, I have no good thing."
Yeah.
Sort of all the goodness within us truly comes from God, which is yeah, I think it's so simple, but it's also so powerful.
Mm-hmm. So, was it just 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, you and I and Sam did a funeral for Rebecca Verhoff, and this was one of the texts that she and Jim chose. So I ended up preaching on this text, and I spent some time talking about that. That apart from God, I have no good thing. And I read a commentator who was saying that you can take that two different ways. Apart from God, I have no good thing. One is that, hey, every good thing comes from God, like the light, the sun in the sky, the coffee in this cup, that kind of thing. Everything that's good comes from God. But also another way to look at that is to say, um, if you detach anything from God, it begins to lose its value.
Hmm.
So if you look at a tree, it's just a tree until you consider the fact that God made that tree, and God is the creator of that tree, and God loves that tree. He loves that tree into being, and he actively, willingly create or maintains the existence of that tree. And you can say the same thing about, um, any kind of object or any kind of idea or any moment of time, or even a person on the street, who you might not know. Like how do you really get down to the value of that person? Well, that person becomes most valuable to you when you consider the fact that that person's made in the image of God. When you attach that person to the image of God, then and only then, I think the psalmist is saying, do we truly understand the value of things. And apart from God, we have no good thing. We don't understand the value of our lives until we see it with the frame and in the context of God and His goodness to us.
And then it picks up in the fourth verse. It says, "The sorrows of those will increase who run after other gods." The idea that almost if you're putting value in something that isn't God,
Yeah,
that all of a sudden, this great weight of sorrow and pain, or
yeah,
the feeling of insecurity, or lack of safety suddenly comes
yeah.
out. If I think there's so many things that we could sort of replace God with right now in this time.
Oh yeah.
Everything from Netflix to food
Hmm.
to any sort of false sense of security. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, the value shifting.
that's right. And I feel personally like really susceptible to that. And maybe there's something about being cooped up. Maybe there's something about, just reading bad news all the time, where like there's this survival mechanism in me that says, grab onto this, make sure I have enough of that. And so I'm, processing like, do I have enough this? And am I making sure to spend enough time doing that? And then judging myself according to those things and feeling like I don't measure up. And then, of course, then the opposite of that is, um, apart from God, we have no good thing. And so that makes me want to focus in on practices of gratitude, right? And to really take note of the stuff that I have and to thank God for those things and to be present to those things. And some of these really ancient traditions of, we should pray and thank God for our food before we eat it. So before we put a single green bean in our mouths, we're going to attach that green bean to God and to say, this is not just a green bean, but this is, the grace of God to me and to us. And then suddenly things, like the psalmist is saying, become more and more valuable. But it's hard.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess, it involves slowing down. And it's like we have all the time in the world now, it feels like, but yet, I don't know if you're like me, but my mind is just constantly,
Mm,
and it's in those
mm,
moments when your brain's sort of constantly racing that I think that you um, either replace God or I would say, maybe a bit more forget God in certain moments.
mm,
I think it's
mm,
particularly hard as parents during this time when you have work demands and then you have kid demands and you have food demands and just going to the grocery
yeah.
store is terrifying now. And um, yeah, I mean, I think that the temptation is to really replace God with anxiety, which is a sort of
Hmm.
incredibly active, high energy sort of mind, and to really slow down during this.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I also wanted to bring out a discovery that I had, which is probably the reason this psalm is in the lectionary, which is that Peter actually quotes this psalm in Acts 2, starting in verse 25, and he's just quoting sort of the last few verses. "I saw the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. I will not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad, and my tongue rejoices. My body also will live in hope. Because you will not abandon me to the grave, nor will you let your Holy One see decay. You have made known to me the paths of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence." And then as he's addressing the crowd, he goes on to say that, David wrote these words, but David ended up dying, and Jesus rose again. And these words sort of point to Jesus and that he's going to live. and
Hmm.
sort of like frames it in this beautiful Easter resurrection sort of prophetic way. And I thought that
Hmm.
that was really cool.
That's yeah, that's awesome. I like that. Like, hey, isn't this a beautiful psalm? David wrote this psalm. David's dead. But there's a greater David, and there's a better David, and it's Jesus, and He's alive. I really like how like when we're operating from scarcity or from a deficit, we're scrambling and we want to have enough of this and enough of that, and like we were talking about just a bit ago. But the way that David frames it, and that Paul emphasizes, and that Jesus embodies, is that it's not that we're making our future, but our future is made for us, right? And Christ holds for us our future. Um, the psalmist says, you know, my boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places. And so a lot of people interpret that as like, oh, you know, he must be rich. He's talking about all his money. He's got a lot of property. But there's nothing financial in this psalm. This has zero to do with finances, and it has everything to do with a wealth of relationship with God, and a wealth of trust in God, and a wealth of confidence in God, um, so that we're not earning our future or gathering enough to have a future, but we're not making our future for ourselves, but our future is kept for us
Hmm.
miraculously.
Yeah, could you talk? I mean, I when I read those words, boundary lines, yeah, I guess I had a little bit of confusion. I mean, what do you think what do you think he means by actually like those two words, boundary lines? That's such an interesting way to say that.
Yeah. So I think the super literal translation would be like property. Like my land ends, or your land is right there. My land, my boundary lines are far from here. Like they've fallen in pleasant places. I got a lot of stuff. Got a lot of property, and I can fit a lot of stuff on my property. I'm doing really well financially. Um, and so I know that the psalm does sometimes get interpreted that way. In fact, one time I remember I was visiting someone in the hospital, and I read Psalm 16 to them, and this person, this was a long time ago, and this person who's no longer with us said, "What do you think? I'm rich or something?" Um, and my response was, well, I don't know what my response was. My internal response was, well, yeah, with Christ, right? Like that's the idea. Is I don't know how much money you have, nor do I really care so much. And I'm not here to remind you of your money, um, but we are wealthy, and our like when we talk about kingdom, we talk about Christ's kingdom, we talk about Christ's reign. Well, we are heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. And so the boundary lines have fallen for us in very pleasant places. That doesn't mean we're rich, at least not financially, but our futures are secure.
Hmm.
And um, and we look out and we see a tree and we say, that's not just a tree. That's the love of God manifest to us.
Hmm.
And we see a human being and we say, that's not just a collection of cells. That's someone who's made in God's image and is eternally significant. So
Yeah.
suddenly the boundary lines are in very pleasant places because everything is shot through with value, right? Um, and even though, like you and I were saying before this camera, we kind of have this post-Easter slump, right? It's like, oh, Easter's over, we're tired, and that may be, and we may be tired. That's fine, but still, everything is shot through with value for us, whether we feel it or not,
Hmm.
and that's pretty valuable. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. My brain also takes me to the idea, you know, we talk about this on Easter too a lot, is the sort of inerrant freedom that we have in Jesus, that we
Mm,
sort of pass back and forth, you know,
interesting.
without boundaries, spiritually, if we rest assured in that freedom that Jesus gives us through our salvation, that we can,
That's great.
yeah, we can go so many different places in human relationships and in our prayer lives and yeah, just sort of living into that boundaryless freedom. Um,
So there's room for creativity and liberation,
mhm.
and we don't have to feel like we're hemmed in. Is that kind of what you're?
Yeah,
That's
that's where my brain went.
that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
Um, where are you going to take us with the? Where are you going to take us musically?
Well, I'm still kind of singing through this book as much as I can, Psalms for All Seasons, and once again, it's set in a minor key, which is kind
Mm.
of where our lives are right now. Everything's
Yeah.
a bit minor, but it's called "Protect Me, God, I Trust in You," and I only found actually a couple settings of this psalm. There weren't a ton, as I just did a quick sort of Google hymn search, but um, what I found interesting in the verse I'm going to sing is Protect me, God, I trust in you. I tell you now, you are my Lord. On you, my happiness depends. I almost wanted to turn it to joyfulness, just sort of
Hmm.
joy being sort of a deeper, I guess, more boundaryless, if we wanted to use that space. Happiness, feels like it's so contingent, and as we're talking about value, happiness in my mind doesn't have as much value. So um but that's that was the way he sort of set this text, and maybe that's my own struggling with that word, blessed happiness.
You know what this means, though, is that so Psalm 16 is one of my favorite psalms, and I say that all the time, but it really is. And this means that you have to write your own Psalm 16 song.
Yeah.
Like there's room in the Psalm 16 market apparently.
Yeah,
So
and I don't know if I'd put it in minor, I but there's something, yeah, I guess there's something sort of comforting still to be sort of in this monk sounding place. So we'll I learned it, and we'll take a listen to it and kind of see where it takes you all.
can't wait.
Great. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye bye. Protect me, God, I trust in you. I tell you now, you are my Lord. On you my happiness depends. Protect me, God, I trust in you. So now I'm glad in heart and soul, for I have found security among the